big plays. He had a big fight around one of the first Barons as well that ended up doing a ton of damage. But once we got later into that one, some of the finishing touches, definitely a little bit more of a struggle. As we head into the draft for game number 3, it looks like TT opting back towards blue side, which is that advantage now because of the 1v1 that was won almost 3 hours ago at this point by Hoya against Zika. So it looks like they prioritized that Vi going towards Beichuan. It was something that he found success with earlier in the group stage, and so going to have another opportunity to make a ton of plays in the early stages.
It had been banned away from him as well so far this series, so really good to see that he gets his hands on that first of all. The Skarner and the Sejuani going to be the opted into bans, so they know that they're getting a Vi pick locked up here. They seemingly have thought about it, saying, okay, we'll take Ezreal, I can buffer the cease and desist and make sure that I'm not where the Vi is when that ultimate lands. They've also got the Maokai, so that creates a lot of space. As soon as you see Vi start to channel to go in with the ultimate, you call the Nature's Grasp, you put those roots forward and you root everybody back in place. You create a large separation between the Vi and the rest of the team. However, if TT decide that they're opting full dive all the way in, maybe the Maokai ulti isn't going to be enough.
I mean, it seems like it's a very different style of composition from game number 2 from LNG. It was all going in, all gas, no breaks in game 2. Now they're okay with playing a little bit further back. They have the Ezreal, of course, for Photic, as well as that Maokai, which can provide a lot of peel. Like you mentioned there, Rude, going to be an Ahri locked in for SeTab here, one of his champions that he had a lot of experience with in the LCK and in the LCK Challengers League, alongside that Nautilus for Feather.
Oh, okay. So we'll see how LNG adapt, because so far they've got decent disengage. Honestly, they could just triple down on this as best as possible. There's no surprises with the ThunderTalk composition, right? We know exactly what they're going for. They're going to be going all in. They're looking to try and dive on top of you with this Ahri Nautilus combo. Whoever you are, you have to find some way to be safe. I think that the Leona lock-in here, just to give them a little bit of power through that laning phase, means that there's an element of fighting back for LNG. There was an option for them to go for something a bit more disengage-oriented, but that's not a bad thing in its own right. For TT, though, what are the pairings of AD carries that you can go for? Well, you've got two sides of the coin. The Kai'Sa is the first one, where you just dive in with the ulti, you absolutely go hell for leather. You've now also got things like a Jhin, which you might want to look to ban, and again, up against tanks, it's not the best thing in the world, but it's really good at enabling the rest of the setup. So you lock down an Ezreal and all of a sudden you've got Curtain Call coming over the top. There's another chance there to take that Jhin into the bot lane and help out the rest of the team.
And this is a very similar style of draft from ThunderTalk that we saw in game 1 specifically. When you look at their jungle support and how they're able to play together around the map, it was the Poppy Renata. It was them kind of working zones, and specifically Beichuan finding these big picks. Beichuan's going to have the opportunity to do that again. This time has a little bit of extra help from Feather on the Nautilus. Has that point and click crowd control. Can really single out one member, and against somebody like an Ezreal who is very slippery, having that point and click always very, very important. So as we round out this second phase of bans, interesting to see the Ambessa finally taken off the board. It really hasn't been a priority in either of these drafts, and so it's going to go completely unpicked throughout this first series. And the final ban here for TT will be the LeBlanc, one of Haichao's most played.
Okay, so a little bit of comfort taken away from Haichao, and then some really thematic champions taken away by LNG. So TT, they're going to have to dip a little bit further into their pool to see if they can get some good dive picks going down. And I think that this Kindred here, if it gets locked in, would be absolutely wonderful.
Oh.
Gets taken, and I think that that's such a really solid pick versus what you've already seen from a ThunderTalk. It just stops that engage right in its tracks, and it also, for an Ahri who's looking to reset, prevents that immediately, right? The Spirit Rush charges going to be struggling to be found, is the short answer of that. Won't be easy at all for the Ahri to get those resets going.
So 1xN now looking to round out this competition in the bottom lane with the Nautilus is going to be the Miss Fortune, actually. Now, we saw Photic actually play this Miss Fortune fairly often last year, but not a ton from 1xN, I believe, in the 2024 season. So a pretty surprising pickup here, Rude. What do you think?
No, I mean, I like it versus an Ezreal. You can attempt to match range with those double ups through minions, and when you're looking for an ultimate that's going to do damage on a CC target, hey, my Miss Fortune fits that brief. The issue that I'm finding right now is that they're going to end up with a lot of missed synergy if these Gragas and Miss Fortune ultis end up syncing up with one another. Ideally, I love Gragas versus Kindred. It's such a good answer. You knock them all out of the Lamb's Respite with your ulti. the way that the game ends up playing out, typically you're using your Gragas ulti for an engage to try and facilitate some sort of a fight in the first place, and then the Lamb's Respite is used afterwards. But if Hoya can hold on to that, if Hoya can make the the transition into that mid game or into those team fights without having to use his cask, it can have a lot of power.
Yeah, so with the Taliyah picked up here for Haichao, it means that officially we have our lane assignments. It's going to be Maokai top lane, actually, for Zika, the player that is known for things like his Jax, like his Camille, like his Renekton, things like that. He's going to be on tank duty this time around against the Gragas in what it's kind of like a 2016 top lane matchup of some sorts up there.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of the best tanks currently, unfortunately, which is really sad to watch because he just gets healed by everything. And Gragas' cooldowns are relatively short as well, so the Maokai is just going to be sapping you, constantly healing, and then you get, is it Unending Despair is one of these items that is just currently incredibly obnoxious. So things like anti-heal, probably going to need to be on the menu for at least somebody on ThunderTalk at some point. So keeping their eyes on how well they can cut through a Maokai as well is certainly something that they're going to have to try and broach, because looking back, thinking to their roster, tank shred, not something that they've got a lot of, right? Miss Fortune, a champion that really struggles specifically versus tanks. The Ahri doesn't want to be hitting tanks, and then you've got support top lane. So again, the Maokai could very much be Thanos this game, really struggling to go down, but if they keep it behind the curve, maybe they're going to be accelerating the Miss Fortune to a point where she's so far ahead that maybe you can keep on cutting down the tree. We'll have to wait and see, though.
Now, as we get into this game number 3, I'm definitely looking at this jungle matchup, specifically WeiWei on this Kindred. And something that we talked about, Roodood, before we actually went live, is just the thought of WeiWei's role on this newfound LNG roster and how it could potentially be a little bit different than what we've seen from him in the last couple of years. When you're playing with someone like Scout and Gala all the time, you're allowed to be on Sejuani duty a lot of the time and have that be okay. Looks like they're going to put a little bit more juice into WeiWei. He's going to be a big carry for LNG in this decisive game of the quarterfinals.
No, and I'm absolutely here for it as well. He's done his job so far, playing the more facilitatory roles throughout the first 2 games. Let's give him a little bit of agency in game number 3 to really start to get things going. And again, I want to emphasize that this is now an early game snowball composition for TT. Yes, they've got elements of late game team fight where they can pick off one target, but I'm really concerned because the carries that LNG have drafted are all really solid late game. So Ezreal, Taliyah, and Kindred can all be very solid carries, as we're actually seeing WeiWei take away the red buff, and that is traded by Beichuan. But the Vi and the Ahri, they're going to kill one person. There's then 2 other carries for LNG that they have to try and get through. And on top of that, they have to try and get through Zika, who is going to be this massive immovable front line for LNG.
And as we start off this game, we do have a lane swap once again here for game number 3. It looks like this time, though, it was initiated by ThunderTalk if they sent 1xN on the Miss Fortune up to the top side alongside Hoya. So again, the team that initiates the lane swap always gets the worst end of things in terms of tower plate damage, but if they're the ones that are initiating, it means that they have a matchup in this lane, in one of the side lanes that they don't necessarily enjoy. Looks like Feather and Zika both hit level 2 and then are going to go on a retreat for LNG specifically, going to try to get as many plates off that bot lane as possible before the 5-minute mark.
Yeah, so Feather attempts to get level 2 before going back down to this bot side and, trying to catch a little bit of experience. He's here to support the teleport that is going to come through from presumably Hoya from that top side, but LNG, they're already in position, making sure that Feather can't get into this lane, and that if Hoya TP's in, it's a 4 versus 1, at worst a 4 versus 2. And so far, Hoya calls it. He doesn't want to burn the teleport because he knows he's just going to get dove, but
here he goes.
Now he's done it. 4 versus 2.
Yep, and immediately getting hit by the Twisted Advance. Feather did not show, but it does not matter because First Blood will be picked up here by WeiWei and LNG, and they're going to go for the redive as well. Zhuo taking tower damage, but he will survive with less than 100 HP. 2 for nothing LNG as they execute that bot lane dive perfectly.
Yeah, no notes, actually. The fact that they didn't even have to burn summoner spells is a testament to itself. The TP from Hoya, unfortunately, signals his own doom, right? He knows that TPing in there is so risky, really. But if he doesn't do it, then he's just sacrificing far too much. And 2 kills already. They're going to the best place as well, onto both of the marksmen. So already LNG incredibly far ahead with that 1k gold lead. They deny all of that experience under the turret as well. It's 1xN who goes to pick up some of it, but again, you have to feel for Hoya and Feather there. They knew exactly what was going to happen, and they still just walked themselves into it.
Yeah, it's always one of those situations, like a lost cost fallacy in a way, because you feel like you have to try to save that massive wave that's crashing underneath, and potentially 2 plates down there in the bottom lane, but you end up losing all of that anyway, and you also lose 2 kills. So goes from bad to worse a little bit there for ThunderTalk, and again, it's the team that initiates the dives, Roodood, that ends up on the short end of things. Hey, maybe that means that the ride changes are working a little bit.
Yeah, lane swapping is bad, guys. Maybe you shouldn't do it, and then they get punished for it. So
The results analysis that you can see here on this screen.
Just only the finest, only the finest. And for the time being as well, that's a devastation for TT. We talked about the fact that they have the snowball-oriented composition, the comp that kind of needs to get farmed and needs to get ahead relatively quickly. 1xN has gone back to base, picked up a cull, which doesn't indicate snowball. And we've got already our top laners that have taken a death for Hoya's case as well. So TT really on the back foot so far. LNG with this really heavy scaling composition with the Kindred are more than happy to have this sort of 1.3k gold lead super early on. And I think that moving into the rest of this game, eyes need to be on Beichuan to see what he can do, because Feather needs to stay in lane to just get the bare bones of XP, has only just ticked over to level 3. And from here, it's all on Beichuan now, right? How much can you get done through this mid game to get any semblance of a way back into it?
Yeah, and it becomes harder and harder as we go forward, and as WeiWei could potentially hit level 6 and provide a little bit extra safety on a potential 2v2. Head over to the mid lane, and SeTab tries to find the charm on the Haichao, but is unable to do so. Zhuo, with the Zenith Blade, is able to force the flash out of the Ahri in return. WeiWei on this Kindred now, 2 stacks after picking up that first blood, as well as the Scuttle Crab on the bottom side. He is off to a fantastic start to this game as a grub spawn.
Yeah, and we'll be looking to take those as well. You can already see with Zhuo moving his way through the mid lane, forces the flash from the Ahri. Not the biggest deal. SeTab will ding level 6 and be absolutely fine in just a couple of minions' time. There we go. And from that, the Ahri now regains her safety. But can ThunderTalk find any sort of fight on this top side? I think they absolutely have to look. The only way out is going to be through.
Yeah, gonna find Feather, or find Zhuo, I should say, with the Hex Slash forward. Zenith Blade does not connect, and SeTab will make it a numbers advantage for now. Hoya with a nice body slam will find the first kill under Zhuo, but the Unraveled Earth doing so much. 1xN joining the fight, still numbers advantage for ThunderTalk as they're fully investing into this scrub fight, and it will work out for them as they pick up 2, even up that kill count, and they're gonna try to look for more. WeiWei will fall into the trade of junglers as Beichuan will go down in response, as we all find ourselves all tied up 3-3.
Yeah, perfect. That's exactly what we needed from ThunderTalk. They have this early game composition. You can't just accept that because we lost a little bit early on that we can't play the game at all, otherwise the game just ends. Love that they make this move up to the top side, even with the small experience disadvantage. Their composition earlier on is just that little bit stronger. Hoya comes in, finds a double body slam, they find the first reset onto Zhuo, and from here on in, it's just Ahri season. You're looking with that level 6 to constantly find those kills, pick up as much as possible. Haichao saves Flash, knows that he's going to go down there anyway, and yeah, like you say, it is just a wonderful charm to pick up WeiWei, who again makes the most of that situation, finding the trade kill. But overall, with ThunderTalk finding themselves now with a bit of an advantage, they're looking for another fight.
Yeah, the trouble is both junglers died, which means Beichuan wasn't able to get the grubs. They finally pick up 1 as they once again send all 5. The bullet time barely not able to get Zhuo, but the Hoya with the explosive cask will be able to secure the kill onto the support of LNG. Zika also falling. ThunderTalk finishing these fights and somehow winning them. Another one, 3 for 1 in their favor. Photic and Haichao, though, still alive, trying to target down Feather, who is still only level 3. And now Hoya able to finally go back to base. Still, only one of those grubs taken there, Roodood.
Yeah, and again, Beichuan's the one that falls for TT, so he's not able to pick up the rest of those grubs. 1xN here, playing with a little bit of fire. Photic as well.
Oh, okay. Wow. A lot of damage coming out of that. Miss Fortune, 3-0 and 2 all of a sudden. We got a game.
a really small thing there that we got to see from 1xN. So Zhuo goes in again.
Okay, we're just non-stop fighting. It seems like these grubs just attract these LPL players to force them to go at each other. Level 6 unlocked for Beichuan. Landing that season assist on a WeiWei. Doesn't have the ultimate himself. Hoya doesn't have the cask this time, so WeiWei will be able to escape. And finally, ThunderTalk will get all 3 grubs and also like 7 kills in the extended 3-minute fight.
I mean, what even is bot lane, right? Like, I don't think anybody's been there for the last 3 minutes. And in fairness, that's actually benefiting LNG right now because there's a huge wave down on that bot side that Photic's going to look to be able to go and collect. But I'm sure they would have much rather had 3 grubs and a 3-0 Miss Fortune. And ThunderTalk here, they make the most of what is a really solid early game composition. This is the second time around, I believe, that we get to see them going in. And, you know, level 6 already for the Miss Fortune. Zhuo barely gets out to safety, and then all of a sudden Hoya, it's a 2 birds, 1 stone because he knocks WeiWei right back into the midst of danger as well and ends up finding the kill there. Looks like picture in picture. They're looking for a fight onto Zika as, you know, TT do come out on top.
Yeah, it looks like this Maokai is pretty tanky. Will he be tanky enough, though? I don't think so. 1xN getting stronger and stronger as this game goes on. And this Roodood is what... You know, this series as a whole is what's making me pretty excited about this ThunderTalk roster as we go into the season. Game number 1, their goal was to scale into late game. We didn't see a kill until 12 minutes. They were able to execute on that and win that game. This game, they saw that they were down heavy, and they knew that they had to continue to force fights, and that's exactly what they did. This team knows how to play to their win conditions, and that is what is allowing them to have a lead and potentially move themselves onto the Demacia Cup semifinals.
And, you know, love this True Shot Barrage, actually, from Photic. Even though he didn't take any of the minions, it means that the time taken on that turret for the ranged creeps to die is effectively halved because it takes 1 turret shot instead of 2. Gives LNG a little bit more free time down on this bot side and gives TT a little bit less time on that top side. They are TT that is going to be able to take first brick. It's split 3 ways, but it's still effectively a kill going to 1xN, Feather, and Hoya all together. Whereas down on that bot side, it's Photic who's going to get a large chunk of gold all for himself.
Yep, so kind of it's an interesting trade because you get more gold overall for TT, but you get maybe the resources into the players that you want more for LNG. Photic gets a full tower's worth of gold with all those plates on its own, and WeiWei gets that dragon. First one of the game, now up to 4 stacks on the Kindred. That's that first milestone that you want to hit on this champion as well.
And so far so good for TT. You know, that being said, it's another one of those games where even though they've got now this lead, the game isn't over until they've you know, put the final dint in that Nexus, because otherwise there is that opportunity for your Kindred, your Taliyah, to really start to scale up and find an advantage in those team fights. Bloodthirster finished though for 1xN. We'll get to see where the build path takes him next, whether it's the win more of the Essence Reaver or if it's just going to be an Infinity Edge to brutalize with the early stages of Miss Fortune. And TT looking like they want to continue their dominant streak through this game. 4 people in that mid lane, see if they can secure some of the plates in there as well.
Yeah, 1xN and Feather have basically been living in the mid lane ever since that last Grubs fight. Speaking of second spawn in about a minute, they have to make sure that they do it quicker than they did the first go around, or else that Rift Child is going to spawn right on top of it. But for ThunderTalk, definitely going to be a priority for them. You see Beichuan taking that top side Scuttle Crab, and 1xN and Feather now with a massive, honestly, I was going to say a massive lead, but it's actually not that large, only about 400, as Photic was able to get a ton of gold back both in the CS department as well as that entire bot lane tower.
Yeah, and you know, with Photic, only being 400 gold behind, it's really a testament to how powerful turrets, minions, all actually end up being, because he caught a massive wave off the back of the Grubs shenanigans that happened, and as you mentioned, got a lot of turret plates and an entire solo turret last plate in gold to himself. So feels quite comfortable in this game so far, has that finished Infinity Edge, is at parity with the Miss Fortune. And if you want to think about it this way, Grapes, the effective advantage that 1xN has in the gold has purchased him the cull. So that 400 gold is sat in the on-hit effect from 1 cull. So it's really not the biggest of advantages so far. And so far for Photic, he's going to be more than comfortable. Sitting, stacking up that tier, has the Triforce finished already, is more than comfortable with where the game is if TT don't continue to push.
We have our Grubs spawned, and right now it's going to be 1xN trying to get some more priority here in the mid lane, using the Make It Rain to force Photic back just a little bit. Beichuan on that top side, again, but here comes that solar flare. It's gonna get cleansed away from, but a nice cast comes through from Hoya. It locks down Zhuo, forces the Lamb's respite out from WeiWei. That's a big cooldown, and that's going to force LNG to play away from these grubs. It's gonna be all ThunderTalk there on the top side.
And you can just see from the way that TT position, they're shielding Beichuan when they're moving out of mid lane. It's the path just discreetly up to the top side that all of a sudden indicates that LNG need to walk down to that bot side to be safe, and it means that the grubs on this top side are completely free reign for Beichuan to take. And again, for a composition that needs to snowball, this is exactly what ThunderTalk want. Find yourself 6 grubs, put yourself in a position to be able to take those turrets that little bit easier. And, you know, there's only 10 seconds before plates go down, so you're not going to be able to get that much gold from them. But it is going to mean that the overall objective of taking down the turrets does become easier for the TT side.
So another instance of all 6 grubs going to one team. This time ThunderTalk, of course, picking them all up. And right as soon as they despawn, the Rift Herald available for them to take as well. So additional snowballing here for TT. Again, what their composition needs to do, play around these picks, use Beichuan kind of as that main initiator and the tool to get them ahead. You notice right now, Rude, Beichuan is the only player on his team that does not have a goal advantage against their respective opponent, but that's because he's been doing so much to set up the rest of his squad.
Yeah, it's because Beichuan has lived in the Rift Herald pit and just sort of took up residency there.
Exactly. So camp's not necessary as long as you are able to win fights and get your carries ahead. As they pick up the Rift Herald there, actually, you know, going to be in his hands, as we'll see where he decides to deploy that, either mid or bot lane tier 1. Still available for the taking as ThunderTalk opening up about a 2,500 gold lead here in this one, Rude. It's not the same lead that I think we saw from LNG in their game 2. But it's still a pretty good situation for them to be in.
Yeah, and I think that overall they'll be happy with this position. The question becomes, they don't want to be content with this. They need to continue to push the pace of the game forward and make sure that they can start finding their way towards a victory, because so far it looks good. But again, as this game gets later, Zika becomes tankier and tankier. This Maokai, whilst has only built health and health and lucidity boots so far, at some point we'll start picking up some actual really dangerous statistics. That means the MF can't actually get through him necessarily as quickly.
Yeah, and I think right now, you are LNG, you're kind of making sure WeiWei is able to continue to be in a good position. Haichao actually absorbing a ton of experience, now sitting at level 12 compared to Zika and WeiWei both at level 9. So that is where a lot of the experience has been allocated, not necessarily the gold, as still SeTab has that lead, but yeah, still going to be focusing on that Kindred. Again, WeiWei on this new look, doesn't see a ton of him on carries in 2023 or 2024, but now trying to take firm control of that as he's going to pick up his second dragon of this game.
So the quiet before the storm almost here. This is the same sort of trend that we'd seen from game number 1, where we had you know, this relatively quiet early stage, right? Granted, there wasn't as much fighting around the grubs in game number 1 as we got to see this game, but we've got this trade. We've got 2 Drakes for 6 grubs. It's happened in every game so far.
See that?
And now the third dragon tends to be when we get that explosion, that one team starting to take an advantage, or both of these teams just absolutely bare-knuckle brawling and kind of trading out evenly.
I'm just very intrigued at the 2 blue-pink wards straight in the mid lane. I don't know how that necessarily happened. Maybe we'll be able to answer that in a little bit, as Zika did go in, but yeah, little bit of mismanagement of resources there as the Rift Herald gets spawned down in the mid lane. Tier 1 turret, a little bit healthy still, as it should be able to survive, as those pink wards definitely doing a little bit of gaining vision there for TT as the Nature's Grass comes out alongside the Solar Flare, forces the cleanse. Already at 1x, but a big bullet time from the Miss Fortune will make sure that it's already 3 kills in favor of TT. Hoya finds the body slam, forces Haichao to flash away, and they're still looking for more, but a nice seismic shove allows for Haichao to get one back. SeTab lands the charm, and the flash forward from 1xN will take down the Taliyah. Hoya just ins under the tier 2, but it's fine. ThunderTalk win the fight.
Yeah, they get the tier 1 as well. They get 4 for 2 in the end there, which is exactly what they're after. Well, it's not exactly what they're after. They preferred 4 for 0. But it's a winning position for them, and it's a continuation of that snowball rolling in their favor. 1xN, aggressive with the flash. SeTab, with the very max range of the charm flash, catches Haichao, seals his fate. And just barely ThunderTalk able to find those couple of kills on the back.
Hey,
and
they noticed it too.
They noticed it too, Grapes. The cleanse comes out. It's really nicely timed from 1x, and he gets away from the seismic shove. And notice that there is no Kindred ulti used in this fight. The CC comes down. It's layered well enough so that there's no chance for the Lamb's Respite to come through. And then LNG, they do find a couple of picks on the backside of this, it's worth mentioning. But SeTab, again, literally the max range possible. And 1xN does what he needs to, decides, yeah, I'll go for that. As Hoya, again, catches one Mystic shot too many. Photic did weave one in there so that he would have been taken down. If he eased forward, tanks 2 turret shots, he probably would have gotten away. But the extra Mystic shot is enough to take him out. As SeTab finds the tier 1 turret as well down on the bot side. So again, a progression for TT. They find a lot of kills and turn it into turrets as well.
And that's SeTab. Gonna try to get away from here as 3 members of LNG come down there towards the bottom lane. But as you say, Rude, another one fight for ThunderTalk as they continue to extend that goal advantage. 1xN, man, on this Miss Fortune. 7-0-3. He already won player of the game in game number 1. I have a good feeling that if this game continues the way that it does, he could be looking at back-to-back.
Yeah, he's putting up a name for himself for that this time round. And moving through the remainder of this sort of early or pre-20-minute marker, TT did a really good job at securing all of the outer turrets. Right, they heralded into the mid lane, found a really solid fight off of what was over-aggression from LNG, and then moved down into that bot side as well. Take out that turret also. So we reached this 20-minute marker. Now, Baron damage for a Miss Fortune, typically not the highest. Definitely a champion that can struggle with it. But still a possibility for them when they've got a Vi, a Gragas as well. If they do find a couple of picks, it's not going to be the slowest objective that we've ever seen. It's not Jhin, for example, that's trying to take it out. Would like to see TT try and break open some of those top side turrets, or even just try and invade for some camps. A bit akin to what we saw from LNG in game number 2, right? When they had a lead, they were choking out the enemy by going into their top side, their bot side, denying all the camps possible. Whereas you can see WeiWei actually still more than comfortable to farm, actually ahead in farm over Beichuan as well. So that's the next port of call for TT. They're just all taking their resets. Let's look at them move out onto the map and find their way into the ascendancy more than they already are.
Yeah, with SeTab, taking that bottom lane tower a couple minutes ago, it means that, of course, that really does open up the map for ThunderTalk to, for the taking. The question is, how can LNG be able to maintain WeiWei's farm in a way that allows for him to continue to remain relevant? Of course, the stacks end up being more important than the items a lot of the time, but you definitely still need both, and especially when WeiWei is one of your big carries.
So they're setting up a trade right now. So TT looking for this dragon, but you can see with the amount of pressure LNG have put on that top side, whether they're looking for the Baron or just the top tier 1 turret, they were looking to try and find something where they can lose out on a trade, but lose gracefully. They know that going to the dragon right now, they're going to end up losing out on this fight. So they want to try and find something on the rest of the map, which gives them gold, which gives them an advantage, but that doesn't cost them everything as well. So Hoya on this top side needs to be very careful. There's a lot of marksmen chilling around here, but TT, they put just enough pressure up to that top side, just early enough to ward away LNG, and they actually get the best of both worlds for ThunderTalk, where they get this dragon and they don't lose their tier 1 turret.
Yeah, this dragon obviously huge because it means that you don't have to potentially worry about a soul on the scaling, Kindred Ezreal team, as well as the Maokai, obviously. So definitely a big win there for TT as they are able to, maintain their lead at the very least, Rude. But you remember, for game number 2, when LNG had a lead of this magnitude at about the 15-minute mark, they were able to take a little bit firmer control, I should say, over the game. They were able to end it rather quickly. Baron already in their hands at that point. So what is ThunderTalk doing differently that LNG was able to do so well? I guess we don't really know exactly because we maybe missed a couple of minutes of that because of some of the delays that we had. But what's the next step here for TT?
Yeah, so that they've taken the Drake now. Now it becomes, again, just about denying those jungle camps, trying to find some focus on either top side or bot side. Typically trying to spread yourself across 3 lanes can be quite tricky if you're really trying to find an advantage. That's why you tend to leave your Gragas it will be in this instance to sort of fend for himself, but you want to set up a lot of vision on this top side of the map, make sure that you're working your way to steal away the Krugs, the Raptors and Red Buff when they start to come through, and that you can push in these waves, hopefully in tandem, move into that top side to take those camps away, and if you find the opportunity, you can also look to try and work your way onto that tier 2 turret as well. It seems though that TT just going to be a little bit more cautious about it and are looking for a potential pick onto Haichao. They decided that that's not particularly an option and instead move their way back up to this top side. With no Drake spawning for 3 minutes 30, it means that this top side is the only real point of contest for either of these teams.
Yeah, and so ThunderTalk a little bit scared, I think, to start up this Baron. I think you rightfully should be, especially because, you know, still have some pretty strong champions like WeiWei here on the Kindred. Beichuan did have to flash away as Zhuo did allow for WeiWei to get control over that Rift Scuttler on the top side. But right now, ThunderTalk should be in a pretty good position to go for fights. They right now have 1xN at 3 completed items compared to Photic just finishing up his second and looking to start the components of another. So I mean, right now they're trying. I think right now the goal should be mid-prio with 1xN on this Miss Fortune, take down this tier 2. That's what they're seemingly focusing on right now.
Yeah, and they are going to be able to get themselves that tier 2 turret. And the thing that they have to always try and encounter for or factor in is who are they going to focus, right? It's all about this management of who is the most important target to take down. And if you've got a lot of CC, it's always going to be Kindred, because if you can deny the Lamb's Respite, that gives you all the power that you're looking for to prevent the LNG composition from doing what it wants to do. If you try and focus the Taliyah, you try and focus the Ezreal, and the Kindred gets over there, finds a ulti down, all of that effort, all of that work is effectively null and void. So you have to focus the Kindred in pretty much all of these situations to make sure that that Lamb's Respite doesn't go down. And then if it does, that's a whole other panicking situation that you've got to try and plan for.
Yeah, especially around those neutral objectives. It always gets a little wonky, especially if the Baron is pretty low when that Kindred ulti comes out. We'll say, though, ThunderTalk have set themselves up nicely for a potential team fight. They now have, you know, 2 completed items on Hoya, that extra Fimbulwinter to provide a little bit of extra shielding and things like that. And most importantly, 1xN with a mortal reminder, as we saw on the bottom graphic that the LPL broadcast put up, being able to exert that multifaceted Grievous Wounds onto everybody, as well as providing a little bit of extra armor shred.
And I will say as well, whilst we're seeing this posturing, this is the exact type of game that we need to see Haichao start to perform in, right? We had game number 1 where it was a little bit left by the wayside on the Azir. Game number 2 where he was absolutely dominant on the Akali. This is a happy middle ground where he's got the tools to be a very present threat in these team fights. Just needs to be a little bit more careful about that positioning and how he approaches these team fights. A player that we've already highlighted as has got his coin flippy nature, right? Will win games, will lose games for an LGD roster, which is sort of rebuilt around other players. But now coming into this LNG roster, bigger named organization, can this mid laner step into that role, which is, you know, got some very big shoes to try and fill?
Yeah, I mean, almost one of the biggest that exists in the space of LPL is Scout, of course, in the mid lane. It's been around for so long, and now Haichao going to try to fill the void that was left by him on LNG, the team that made it to the World's quarterfinals just a couple of months ago with Zika and WeiWei. Baron was started up for a second here by TT. A lot of posturing, a lot of almost NA ramming, as I want to say potentially.
Oh, there we go.
The jungle as we finally find a hook and finally find a fight. Lamb's Respite keeps Zhuo alive for now as a big ultimate comes in onto the backline. First kill goes towards ThunderTalk, and SeTab still very strong. Looking for another potential flank. Finds the Spirit Rush, but not the Charm, as Zika now goes in and tries to chase him down. Charm lands only onto the Maokai as TT will retreat, having taken down 1.
Okay, and that's a good timer for this. They're going to be able to try and find the dragon off the back of it, but if they got a little bit more, they would have been able to find that Baron. They focused a lot onto Haichao, who is able to flash out to safety and stay alive. You got to see the power of that Lamb's Respite as well. But so much time, and yes, Zhuo goes down, but if that hadn't have been the case and the Kindred ulti hadn't been used to keep the Leona alive for so long, that could have been a, you know, much worse type of situation, as SeTab just barely able to dodge out on that seismic shove. WeiWei up on this top side, they should be able to take the tier 1 turret as a trade. But again, overall, just so close really in these fights, Grapes.
Yeah, but close fights are good signs for LNG at this stage in the game. They're doing their best, doing their darndest to stall this out, play for that power, play for the power that Ezreal and Kindred have in the late game. continue to get Zika tankier and tankier to make sure that he is unable to go down, and once he's able to start continuing to heal and keep himself alive. So the fact that this game has not gotten blown out of proportion for TT yet is a very good sign for LNG. It was something that TT were unable to do in game 2.
Yeah, absolutely, right? It's something that they failed on, and now going to get a bit of a lesson into potentially how they could have improved, as they are still looking for fights, it's worth mentioning, right? Feather flashing over that wall, looking for an engage, even though it's only onto Zhuo. It's the type of aggression that they're looking for. It's the we need to fight type of mentality, which we actually saw them exhibit around the first set of grubs. They'd had a really shaky early start with a botched or with a great dive from LNG, but since then have been all gas and not particularly so much on the brakes, as Feather just rightly dodging away there from the Taliyah. And we already highlighted Haichao. It's worth mentioning SeTab as well coming into this roster. The only real change that TT made actually into this offseason, being called up from LCK Challengers in a direct trade, direct swap with the RXs, making sure that this step from tier 1, or from tier 2 rather, to tier 1 it's a big one. And now you're up against, again, Haichao, who's a little bit of a lesser name from the LPL, but certainly having played at that tier 1 is going to be a lot more experienced, a lot more touted in this type of situation than you are. And SeTab so far, 2-0-7 on the Ahri, doing a very good job.
Yeah, both mid laners definitely trying to make a name for themselves here. We'll see if any of them can do so as the Baron has been started up. 1xN very, very strong, allowing for this Baron to burn, but Hoya might be caught out just a little bit as the Unraveled Earth does a ton of damage. Bullet time comes out, they're going to try to just burst down the Baron Nashor, and they do, with Beichuan locking down the smite. SeTab looking around for a potential pick, has a Spirit Rush to try to escape if he ends up getting caught out, but will not, as that is a just very clean Baron picked up for ThunderTalk.
Yeah, and the Miss Fortune ulti there, maybe a little bit of zoning, but WeiWei doesn't want to walk head first into the bullet time to try and get in to steal that. Really solid use of resources from ThunderTalk. I was a little bit concerned that Hoya using the cask early on wouldn't be able to use it in a fight that ensued afterwards, but TT just decided, hey, if we don't fight, we're absolutely fine. We can wait for the cooldown and make the most of it a little bit later on. Eyes now setting towards that bot side for the tier 2 turret.
And it's going to take a while because that wave is kind of evened up, but 1xN going to do his best to try to soften up Photic and Zhuo underneath the tier 2 before the wave does end up getting there. That Miss Fortune just so threatening, has picked up his 4th item, the Infinity Edge.
I don't think that LNG are going to look for this, but there's a really deep pink ward sat in the lane currently of ThunderTalk, which if Zika or Haichao wanted to, they could teleport to. I don't think LNG are in a desperate enough position to need to go for that just yet, but it's worth mentioning that it's still there. And if there's another siege that comes through a little bit later on down on this bot side, there is an angle for this Maokai to get into this fight.
Oh, Charm lands on a Photic, but a nice arcane shift away to make sure that no follow-up can be had. Instead, the tier 2 taking a beating right now as Photic once again has to shift out to make sure he does not die. If he goes down, this game could very much be over very, very quickly, as all of a sudden Zika might have found a pick here on to Beichuan. They're going to try to 100-0 him, and they do. Photic getting the kill, and that's going to stall out this Baron push.
Yeah, that's going to stop it in its tracks. Nothing more for TT to grab a great pickup from Zika there. Just spots the Vi a little bit too close for comfort, and Twisted Advance is going to follow you no matter where you go. Great timing as well from Zhuo, it's worth saying. His Solar Flare was preempting the seismic shove from Haichao. Nailed it on the prediction as well. So just that little micro interaction between all of your champions on your roster really working out this time for LNG. As they put the stop to that Baron push, it's not going to mean too much more. And likelihood is that we'll see a fight around this dragon, which could very easily swing the metronome one way or the other for either of these teams.
Yeah, take another look at this. Zika just finds just the perfect angle here. Not a champion we're super used to seeing him on.
No, and it's we can argue the user capability of Maokai is maybe a little bit lower than Jack's, right? We pressed W and the champion died, but still being right place, right time, and the spatial awareness of how to play tanks is certainly something that you have to learn as well. Just being in the correct position and knowing more so what is a legal movement and what is not so certainly becomes very important as Hoya defends his pink ward with his cask, and so you know what, does the job.
Plus 75 for that.
Yeah. For one cask,
for this dragon if they try to start it up.
That's also true, but I think that TT should still be in as good a position to LNG shouldn't want to try and fight this. If they want to contest, it should be on Soul. Shouldn't really be for Soul Point because they've not done enough to get themselves back into the game yet.
Yeah, another interesting thing, as you know, it looks like Beichuan at 1xN are going to pick up this dragon relatively uncontested. As now we see SeTab and Feather actually a little bit forward here. Charm lands onto the Taliyah. I think SeTab should be able to escape, has all 3 procs of the Spirit Rush. The thing I wanted to mention, you know, we talked about how quickly WeiWei was able to snowball the start of this game, get those 4 stacks rather quick. Now that we're 33 minutes in, WeiWei's only gotten 1 extra one since that upgrade. He's only sitting at 5. We're all of a sudden at a point where this Kindred is not necessarily at the point where we want it to be.
No, certainly not necessarily behind the curve, but not as accelerated as it once was. As soon as that 3rd item gets finished off, maybe we can see the Kindred start to have some real impact, but we've got this sort of weird build in where you've got a couple of Sheen procs, you've got a little bit of lethality from the Collector, now we're opting into a Lord Dom's item just because we need Tank Shred. When you see, you know, just a couple of anti-healing champions that are also going to be or a couple of healing champions that are going to benefit from having Grievous Wounds applied to them. So a bit of a hybrid for the Kindred, but all damage items that are all going to do good work when they get to really start to pump out damage.
Yeah, and so now, with that dragon gone, more focus once again around that Baron pit. It continues to be this top side jungle of the red team that continues to be this, you know, just bastion of combat. Whether it was last game here when LNG were the ones forcing the initiative, or here in game 3 with TT. A lot of playing around this vision right now, but it looks like Haichao could have gotten targeted here, but a really nice stopwatch to buy himself some time. The bullet time comes through. They find the ultimate here onto the Kindred. WeiWei has to burn the ultimate soon and will be able to keep himself alive for just a little bit, but Zika now trapped underneath it as well. WeiWei able to flash away. On the other side of the fight, though, it is all SeTab, and it is all ThunderTalk. A double kill in for 1xN, as now it is just Haichao underneath the tier 2 turret. Gonna try to teleport away, but he will get bursted down. Potentially before that, the E from Beichuan will finish the job. Only WeiWei survives as TT are pushing right down mid.
And that may finish the series. Grapes TT have got 5 members still alive and kicking. 30 seconds on Photic, 45 seconds on Haichao. WeiWei has no Lamb's Respite. Zika up in 20. TT going for the end.
2v5. Who's going to find the pick first? Zhuo just trying to clear the wave potentially. A nice cast comes through from Hoya, and that's what I'm Thunder talking about, baby. Upset secured over LNG as they advance to the Demacia Cup semifinals.
Another upset for ThunderTalk. They find themselves taking down JDG now. They've taken yet another scalp in LNG and on their way into the semi-finals. What a performance from the underdogs. Again, after that game 2 as well, where it looked like that could have really been a demoralizing loss. They got absolutely destroyed and slammed, rolled even through game number 2. But into game 3, mentals reset. They move right back out into a very solid opening. And even after the level 1 dive goes awfully as well, right? They got 2 kills given over to LNG to begin with, a snowball starting going their way. They reset themselves, knew what their win condition was, and made their way out into a victory.
I mean, I'm just so excited to see that gold graph, because I think it was pretty much LNG in really secure control at the start of that game, and ThunderTalk knew it. They were like, man, we get outscaled. We are going to lose if we just keep letting these things continue to happen after that really horrible dive at the start of the game on the bottom side. And they decided, all right, screw it. We're going to send all 5 members to these grubs. We're going to try to get as many kills as possible. And that ended up being all it took to get that snowball rolling.
Yeah, I mean, they came away, I think, with 6 kills off the back of what was 2 consecutive fights around the grubs because both junglers died the first time round. So they went again, and then they kept on looking for those fights. And once again, 1xN on this Miss Fortune, I mean, I think is once again for just 1xN as a whole, stepping into a very, very carry-oriented position and doing so seamlessly, was absolutely churning out the damage. Really solid bullet times across both of the team fights that were truly important, and then getting agency from the MF later into the game, something that you can so frequently see be a struggle. I think he ended that game 4.5 items, had the full Infinity Edge as well at some point, picked up another BF sword, was absolutely monstrously fed, and made the most of it.
Yeah, I mean, on that Miss Fortune just really taking over. I think a narrative that got lost a little bit throughout this series is just the fact that 1xN and Feather, as a bottom lane, have been reunited, going back to last split after being able to, play together in with the JDG system back in I think 2021, 2022. Now finding their synergy again, 1xN just had himself a tremendous series against Photic and Zhuo, who have been together again for 3 years at this point, I think, coming into 2025. And Feather on that Nautilus, a very crucial ultimate onto Haichao that started off that engage that ultimately won them the series.
And there again, right, it's the question of, would Haichao being caught there have happened if somebody else had been playing in that role, right? But even still, I think that both of these mid laners have certainly stepped up for what we were expecting from them. I've seen really solid things from SeTab in that final fight. Game number 2 from Haichao, and throughout the majority of this game, Haichao was performing absolutely incredibly well. But there's that gold graph that you're after, Grapes. Does that line up with what we were expecting?
Yeah, you know those the slingshot rides at the amusement park where you're like, you get locked in a little bit. You have to go down a little bit to start things off, and then eventually, once you let go, I mean, it just went off to the moon right there. That's kind of what that gold graph ended up looking like. As we could take a look at some of the damage